Hi, and welcome back to our channel, Pay Down Debt Solutions. As you guys can see from the other day, the big guy's back, so he's running videos and working student scenarios with us. And so, really excited to have him because, man, sometimes it's hard to go at it alone when you're the only one that's able to, function in the family. So hopefully none of you guys will be afflicted with it. It is not a fun flu this year. So today, what I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about thinking outside the box, okay? And it's going to piggyback a little bit on what Dan talked about in his video the other day. So I want to talk to you guys about going big or going home, right? So that's something that everybody thinks, let's go big, let's do it all, let's get it all done. And whether or not that might be the right strategy for you. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about, sometimes smaller debts and working with smaller debts can benefit you and do really well for you. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to run a scenario for you that talks about some other ways we can think outside the box, because we know that when we lower our interest and we pay less in interest, obviously we win, right? And doing it through velocity banking is by far the best way that I found. Now, I had some students comment the other day, and I love their comments because they're great. And they said something about like, yeah, velocity banking is a lot more fun, but you can pay down chunks on your loans, and I totally agree with that. You can pay down in chunks on your loans, but what I find and what I have found over the years is that when people run it through velocity banking, it's already said and done, and you guys don't have to have that temptation of having money sitting around and, oh, do I put it on that loan that I have there, or maybe I can hold it back and there's a couple things that I need for the house or a couple things that I need. So if you run it through velocity banking, I think people are more successful doing it that way. And over time, you do save a lot of money by running it through velocity banking. So for those of you that don't know us, my name is Jen and Dan is my husband. He also runs videos. We created Pay Down Debt Solutions to help you guys win over the big banks, to help you guys win and get out of debt, especially in the year 2025, because now this is a great opportunity for all of you to really take control, right? To really take the bull by the horns and get your finances in order. It's early. The year is young. It's early. It's time. The time is now to get this done. So, what is velocity banking? Okay, so real quick, real fast recap. It is a strategy where you are running all of your finances, all of your income is going into a line of credit to help work down your debts. Okay, so that line of credit is what we call a debt destroyer. And when you use that debt destroyer to pay down your debts, you will pay them down faster than you will in a traditional banking setting where you're feeling payment poor and you're strapped and you're trying to make ends meet. Because what velocity banking teaches is how to lower that interest rate and free up payments so those payments become cash flow to you. And that is what made all the difference for Dan and I, and that is what's going to make all the difference for you too if you learn velocity banking. Okay, so again, those of you that don't know us, we are business owners. We've been business owners for quite a few years. We both did work in corporate America for a while, so I know corporate America. And Dan is an engineer. He has been an engineer for years and, left the working for the car companies to run his own businesses. And I followed suit a few years later after that. And now I'm running my own businesses as well. But I come to you with the knowledge of banking because I was a banker and I was also a branch manager. So I have that to back up everything that I'm showing you today. But as a banker and as a branch manager, they did not and they do not teach you velocity banking, mostly because they don't know. They're not bad. It's not like they're trying to withhold that information. They just don't know how to do it, and they don't know, how to make this work. And when you walk into a bank and you ask them for a line of credit, they're going to steer you to that loan every single time because that loan has a lower interest rate. And we care not here about those interest rates when we're working with velocity banking, because we work with lines of credit. We know that loans will offer a little better rate, but it's the line of credit that we're looking for that best rate on, because the line of credit is that debt destroyer. All right, so go big or go home, right? So that's the question. So a lot of times we talk to you guys about getting a personal line of credit, such as a home equity line of credit, a first lien home equity line of credit, a business line of credit, or a personal line of credit. And yes, we talk about credit cards. But specifically, if we're talking about a big line of credit for you, we're really going to be working with all of those except for the credit cards, right? Because it is the home equity lines of credit and those other lines of credit that will give you a bit of a larger line for the most part, okay? And so when we work with lines of credit, we can run every bit of our income through that line of credit in order to then drop our balances and pay things off faster. When you work with a credit card, you can't put certain bills and certain debts on a credit card. And so that limits you somewhat as to what income you can put on it. Still works well. Still, you can run velocity banking using a credit card, but the lines of credit will get it done faster for you. Okay. And today I'm actually going to be working with a line of credit. Okay. And it is a customer. I wouldn't call them a customer. We call them students now. And they're actually friends of ours. They're other business owners, and their debts looked very similar to ours. They actually did take a big chunk of savings. They didn't want to, but when they found out how quickly we got out of our debts, they decided that they were going to take and chunk down on their debts, and then they still had this left over. So I do want to show you guys, I think this is a great example. They accelerated by taking some of that savings money and getting rid of some of their debts, but then they had some left over that we worked with them. All right, so going big doesn't always mean that that is going to be the best situation for you. Now, for simplicity's sake, yes, it may be more simple and you're still going to win. But sometimes we need to work with smaller loans first, okay, and chunk down on the debts that we have, all right? So sometimes going medium is how you win big. And that's what these guys did. They went medium over here. So this is actually, like I said, it's going to be today's example. So, but sometimes going small, where you work with one debt destroyer at a time, is sometimes a better strategy for overall savings and interest. And the reason for that is when you take a lot of debt and you're putting that on a line of credit of some sort, depending on the interest rate, okay, it's still a big chunk of money and a big interest rate that you're working with to pay down, okay? So there's lots of different factors that's going to come in there. One of those factors is obviously your cash flow, or how much cash flow we can alleviate for you by running the strategy this way, okay? So sometimes it makes sense to throw it all together in a big line and do it as a big chunk consolidation line of credit that you work down through velocity. And other times it's better to take pieces and parts of it and work simultaneously, okay? And work two things down at a time. Now, Dan and I have a great tool. We have a tool that Dan created that is our pay down debt calculator, okay, and calculates all of this for us. So it makes it rapid, quick for us. But you can still do this obviously through the long form math, okay, and that works just as well. But you also then, when you're working with smaller debts, you need to break out your debts sometimes and run, whether consolidating it makes the numbers work better, or if you consolidate some of it and then you take and you run your other cards with payments or minimum payments at the same time, and then pull those over, because you may find that there is a better balance doing it that way. And again, it's all going to depend on interest rates, and it's all going to depend on what you can handle. Okay, so what you can handle. So with velocity banking, either strategy has you winning, right? So whether you take it all together and work it down with one debt, or if you take it pieces and parts at a time and working it down that way, you're going to win no matter what, because you're winning over that traditional banking system, because all of your income then goes to work for you. It doesn't just catch up on bills. So right now, most of you are just catching up on bills every month, okay? And you're barely getting by catching up on bills. So what we're proposing you do is to work with velocity, right? And pay everything down much faster through magic. Remember, this is all through magic. So the name of the game is lowering interest being charged and what you can handle, right? And so we want to, if we can, halt that interest, right? And lower that interest, okay? So we're working with both. Now remember, magic, that's monthly adding gentle interest charges. So that's where I'm getting magic from, all right? Now, when we halt our interest and when we lower our interest, we win. Obviously, we win, right? Number one, we pay less over time. Number two, we keep our money rather than give it away to the banks, all right? So that's one way that we can win. So today, I want to talk to you a little bit about lines of credit here. And up here, Dan, this is actually going to piggyback on what Dan did yesterday, right? Or the day before, because what he talked about with you was figuring out when to pay those bills, right? When to pay your big payments. So this is piggybacking on that a little bit, and I want to go into a little more detail about that. So we know we can't time the market, right? They always say you can't time the market, but you can time velocity banking. There is a way to time it, okay? So if you can't time the market, how in the world can you time with velocity banking? Well, when you work with a PLOC or HELOC or BLOC, right? A personal line of credit that stands for, a home equity line of credit that stands for, or a business line of credit. So when working with these lines of credit, okay, we know that we are going to get a direct deposit, all right? And so all of our money then, all of that direct deposit is then parked onto that HELOC, BLOC, or PLOC, right? It's parked into that line of credit. So how does that look? What does that actually mean? So what that means is your money comes into your checking account. Then you make a payment of this PLOC, BLOC, or HELOC. You make a payment to it, which then immediately drops the interest, right? So it immediately drops the interest, all right? So that's what you're doing. So you can't put money directly into a line of credit, right? It has to first get direct deposited into your checking account, or you run and make a deposit to your checking account, and then you make a payment to that line of credit. So that's actually how it works, okay? And so when we do this, right? So let's say, here's a hypothetical, right? And it actually is working with some of these numbers from the people that we know, okay? So if we have a $7,500 deposit, okay, so total household income $7,500, that comes in, and we put that on our HELOC, BLOC, or PLOC. And let's say that line is at 55,000, okay? And so you take 55,000, you immediately subtract 7,500, which equals 47,500. So now that HELOC, BLOC, or PLOC has dropped immediately from 55 to 47,500. All right. So what does that mean for your interest rate then? Okay. So if we're working with a home equity line or personal line or business line that's at 10%, okay. So this is my example. It's going to be 10%, and prime is right around 9. So that's about right. Okay. So about 10% could be what you are working with here. If you look at your interest rates, right? So at 55,000, the interest is going to be on 55,000 at 10% for 1 month. Again, 1 month, you guys. It's going to be $458. Okay, so $458 is going to be the interest on 55,000. All right. Now, when you make that deposit and you make that payment and it drops it to 47,500, the interest on that for that moment, that day, right, is going to be $396. Okay. So you can see there's a big difference between these, right? So you're taking 458 versus the 396, right? And so what we teach then is taking an average, okay? Because the best way to do it and the easiest way to do it is to take that average, because, all right, you take your high balance and your low balance for the month, you average them together, and you're going to then figure your interest rate based on that, all right? And it's the best way to do that because we know we're still going to be making payments that are coming out of that checking account, which is actually coming from that line of credit, right? So the payments are coming out, okay? Which means the balance is going to go back from 47 and it's going to creep up, right? It's going to creep back up. Now, it will never reach the 55,000 again, right? Because we're using velocity banking and we've taken care of our debts. And so our debts are making, and the debts that we took care of, right? Those payments are now gone. So that's cash flow that helps to work our balances down, okay? So it's never going to come back up to the 55, but it's going to be averaged somewhere, okay? And that's why we take an average. So if your interest again at 55 is 458 and at 47,500, 396, we know that our statement, now your statement dates are all going to be different, okay? But the average daily balance is calculated from statement date to statement date, right? And so let's say your statement date is the 1st through the 30th, okay? So ignore all this for a second. If your statement date is the 1st through the 30th, okay, and your payment is due then on the 1st, all right, so that means you have to make that direct deposit of your income on into that line by the 1st, okay? So hold that thought. Now, we're going to back up here. We know that our bills have to be paid out of our checking account, which the money is really coming from our line of credit, okay? And so you can make transfers. That's one way to do it. You can make transfers to take care of those bills. You could do that, okay? So you can make the transfers, take care of your bills that way. That works. Or you can have it connected for overdraft, like an overdraft line of credit where it automatically pulls and pays as things hit your checking account and pays automatically for you, giving you a pretty good average, okay? That's going to give you a pretty good average. So you've got the bills that are coming out, right? And we know that this line of credit is handling those bills for us, all right? So once we do this and the bills come out, let's say our new balance then comes back up to 53,900. Okay, so after all the bills and everything are taken care of and our cash flow goes to work for us, let's say we're at 53,900. So let's say that's what it is. All right. So let's say we do something a little bit different. Let's say we know that if we make all these payments out of that check, out of that line of credit, okay, that our average daily balance is going to then be averaged, right? It will be pretty much. But what if we do something different? What if we have a credit card? Let's say we have a credit card and we run all of our expenses through that credit card. Bills, you name, everything comes out of that credit card. Now, that credit card payment is still going to be paid out of this, right? It's still going to be paid out of this home equity or personal line of credit or business line of credit. It's still going to be paid out of that, right? It is. So we still do have a mortgage probably, right? We have a mortgage payment that can't be run through a credit card. We know that, so that's still going to have to be paid. Okay, it's going to be held out and paid. But maybe, just maybe, you move that mortgage payment, because you can sometimes move mortgage payments. Maybe you move that closer to the end of this statement, okay? Maybe you move it. Or maybe you take care of you take advantage of your grace period and you wait until almost 15 days and then make that mortgage payment, right? Because if you do that, this balance is going to be lower for longer, right? It's going to be lower for longer. So there's things you guys can do if you can handle it, right? If you can handle it, there are things you can do. You can move that mortgage statement, or I'm sorry, that mortgage payment date. You could do that, or you can use your grace period and stave it off until you have to make that payment, all right? And then at the same time, everything else you're going to run through a credit card, one credit card. You and your husband or wife are going to have your credit cards that are joint to that one credit card account, and you're going to be living off of it, right? And your bills are all going to come off of it. So why am I proposing this? I'm proposing this because what happens then, you have this credit card, you run all your bills and everything through this credit card, right? So this line of credit is sitting there at 47.5 for a long time now because all your bills are going through the credit card. You're not making anything. Nothing's coming off of that credit card. I'm sorry, that home equity line. Nothing's coming off of it. It's all going through that credit card. So now you know you have a statement date for the credit card. And let's say it's the 15th through the 15th. Let's say that's when it is, okay? You have a couple options here. You can make an itty bitty payment on the due date of that credit card. Chances are it'll be very small, right? Or it might be nothing because you're going to be paying this credit card off every single month, right? Because all we're using it for at this point is to run expenses through and bills. That's it. So you're going to pay that off in its entirety once a month. And I propose you do that right before your next income check comes in to slap down that line of credit. So what does that mean? So that means that you are going to be averaging closer to the 47.5 in interest payments than you're ever going to be at that 55. You're probably going to even average lower than the actual average, which is 51,250, okay? And I got that by adding the high and the low together, dividing by 2, okay? So the average then would be 51,250. And the interest rate on that average is about 427, so somewhere in the middle of these two. But I bet you, and I know it works, if you actually run everything through that credit card, you're going to be closer to the 396, so 400 something in interest, okay? So thinking outside the box for you guys, right? Thinking outside the box so that you can learn a different way. Now, I want to go over the scenario with these students who are actually friends of ours, business owners, and we're going to talk about something else that they can do, right? Something else they can do. Now, I want to pause here for a second and say this to you guys. Dan and I are going to be running a class, a velocity banking class, working with your numbers, okay? So if any of you are interested, please just email me. And in the subject line, I just want you to put class. And then if you're interested and your availability basically, okay? Because we're probably gonna run it in April, maybe the first week of April we'll start it. It'll be a 4-week class. It'll be about an hour to an hour and a half. And we're going to basically start with velocity banking, the basics of velocity banking. And then we're gonna use your numbers and work your strategy with you. I'm limiting the class to 6, so we don't want a ton of people. So I'm going to limit this one to 6 so that we can actually work with you guys together. The good thing about this is you will learn from each other. you're going to learn how to use velocity banking and how to do velocity banking properly, okay? So that's another thing that we find is that when students come to us and we run scenarios with them and they have a coaching call with us, they still need a little bit of help with how to run velocity banking and how it actually works. So this way, you guys get more tutelage and you still get a plan for your numbers. So if you're interested, just send me a quick email to let me get out of the way, info@paydowndebtsolutions.com. Put in the subject line class, let me know your availability and if you're interested, and I will pull the first 6 that come to us and we will work with you guys, okay? So anyway, just wanted to say that. Now, back to our student scenario here. So another way we're thinking outside the box, and another way that we can either go big or go home or go medium, right, and still win big. So let's look at this. We have students here that are friends of ours again. Income is $7,500, okay? Their total expenses, and I tried to match it and make some sense for you. So $7,500 is their income. Their total expenses are $6,140, which means they have a cash flow of $1,360. Now, these guys were in a whole lot more debt at one point, and they did have savings. And again, with working with us, they chunked down some of these debts, got rid of some of their debts, but now they want to work with some more debt and try to eliminate that as fast as possible. So we took a look at everything, all right? Here's their mortgage is at $2,300. I didn't put the interest rates or the balance on that because we're not really working with that right now. We want to take care of these debts first, then they can work on that mortgage. They have a car payment for $696. The balance on that car is $30,958. It's at a 3.75 interest rate, and the interest they will pay over time on that is $2,429. They have a personal loan that's at $32,600. Their payment is $788. It's a 4-year loan. It's at 7.5%. They also have the interest over time on that is going to be $5,235 is what they would owe. They have a Bank of America card, a BOA card for $12,300. It's at a $369 payment. It is at 24%. This is a 5-year payback if they run it at the minimums as they are now, and it would cost them $8,171. They have Synchrony, okay? This is a killer. It's $9,360. It's $320. The interest on that is 29%. If they let that term out, it's going to be about 4.9 years, okay? And that's at $7,095. So that means their total interest debt, if they let these run out, is going to be $22,930 that they will owe out of their pocket. Remember, they don't feel it today. They're going to feel it, though, over time. Their payments are right now $4,473. And their total debts, excluding the mortgage, is $85,218. Now, they were able to get a HELOC for $130,000, okay? And that HELOC is at a 10% rate. Yeah, it's a 10% rate. And so with this, we looked at it and they said, okay, do we throw all of our debt in and do we let all of that debt run out? And I took a good look at it and I said, there's a couple things we can do here. Yes, you could do that and you will win. So let's say they do that. Let's say they take $85,218. Here's $85,218. They then put all of their income in, remember, because they can. This is a line of credit, so they can put all of their income in. And they start to work their strategy, right? They take the high balance, they take the low balance, they add them together, they divide by 2. That gives them the average, right? We're calculating interest now, right? This is interest. That gives them the average. They then multiply that by 0.10. Remember, we multiply it by 0.10, all right? And then we get a number, and that number then equals or is divided by 12, okay? And that is then going to give them the $678 in interest charge, okay? So this is their interest charge. This is the amount that they are paying, their expenses, okay? Remember, so they've taken care of all of this debt in this scenario. So all of these, right? So all of these are then gone. They took care of these in that debt. And I just ruined my orange marker. Oh, well. All right, so they take care of all of these, right? And so all of that now is in this line of credit and they're working it down. So if we future this out, right, and we work this down with them, that means, okay, it will take them 25 months, so just a little over 2 years, I'm right. Like, think about this, 2 years versus 4 years and 5 years. Okay. So it would take them 25 months, so 2 years, and their total interest would be 93.45, so $9,345. That's a significant savings, and I'm taking that all day long, and I know you are too, right? So this is 9,000 versus the 22, almost 23,000, right? So they could do that. They could run it all together, and they could do that. Now, there is one other thing they could do, right? And here's what this is. Now, their credit is good enough. They could then get two 0% cards, 0% credit cards, and they could move over the Bank of America debt and the Synchrony debt. And I know that they can do this because they brought the offers and they showed us that they had these offers, okay? Now, the Bank of America debt is 369, and they could move it over at a 3% cash convenience check fee. I always want to say cash advance. It's not. 3% convenience check fee, which would mean they pay 300, here, I'll put my dollar signs in, $369 for that, okay, to do that one. Now, if they did it with Synchrony, it's a 4% cash advance fee for $374, okay, so $374. Now, these are separate cards. They're not Synchrony cards or Bank of America cards. They're moving them to, they're totally separate. One's a Capital One, and the other one might be Chase. I am not totally sure on the other one. But so if they move these, okay, which they could do, if they did that, they're going to have $12,669, okay, this 12.3 plus the cash convenience check fee, and then the 9,734, it's this 93.60 plus the 374, okay, for that convenience check fee. All right, so pause there for a minute. So now what they could do is, instead of taking 85,218, right, their total amounts are going to be 63,558. So it's a lower amount that they're going to be putting on that line of credit. Okay, so they will work that down for 12 months. And why 12 months? Because in 12 months, we know both these cards are going to come due. Okay, and I'm splitting out how I'm paying for this. So I'm not going to take $7,500 to slap down on this line of credit. I'm going to take $6,500, and I'm going to take $1,000 and split it between the two cards that they have a 0% halting the interest on, right? So they've halted the interest on those 0% cards. So it's going to be 500 and 500. Now, when you multiply those out, okay, by 12, right? Because it's going to be a year, that drops their balances to 6669 and 3734, okay? So that will be what they have left, okay? All right, so why does that matter? Because of this. They're going to run this down for 12 months. And at 12 months, okay, their balance will be $38,039. $38,039. Now, we then take these two cards and we bring them over and we add them into the line of credit. Up until this point, okay, so for 12 months, they have paid $4,877 in interest running it this way. So they've paid that already. They haven't paid anything on the 0% cards because it's 0%, right? They just paid their convenience check fee. So when we add these in, okay, that means that we're going to work down 48,442. And it takes us 13 months to do that, okay? So 13 months, and we have then paid $2,717 to work it all down, all right? So we take our 13 months plus our 12 months, so we're working about the same time frame, right? And now, here's what we've done then, okay? Oops, sorry, guys. All right, so here's what we've done. We now have a total, right, for all of these debts. It totals $7,594, okay? That is the total interest that they're going to pay. So they have saved, haven't they? Now, granted, they've saved $1,751, so they didn't save a fortune, but I still want to save money no matter what. I'm still going to save it. If it isn't too much trouble for you guys to do something like that and take 0% cards and split things out, you will save money over time still, okay? So sometimes just working with your numbers and seeing what works is the best thing to do. I could have done this a couple different ways. I just took it with 1,000 and split it between the two. Maybe I take 800 and split it between the two and see how that works. You know, there's a couple different ways you could do it. Maybe I take and do more than 1,000. Maybe I do 1,000 a piece. And then I run this down for 12 months and then see if at zero, because then those cards would be at zero, right? Because it's about a year. So then if I don't ever bring those debts in, but then all of that income comes back over, which means that $2,000 would come back over and work down that line, then I wonder what the interest would be, right? So you could do that too. So that again is what's beautiful, you guys, about velocity banking. You have options, and those options can lead you to better and better and better interest rates when you sit and take the time to work them out. Hope you learned something today. Thanks for hanging in with me and learning this today. If you guys are interested in our class, just email me, put that in the subject line. Have a great day, and I will see you soon.